So just looking through the list here, really excited. We have some existing customers, we have some existing channel partners, as well as new people who are just interested to learn more. So I'm going to start with a couple of slides on where and how we started. Some of you have probably heard this before, so feel free to grab a cup of coffee or let your mind wander. But for those of you who haven't, I wanted to share how we arrived at this new release. So our Boring mission. Our mission is simple, it's to save Milestone administrators time. But of course, we do have a hidden secondary mission, and that is to save the companies for who those Milestone admins work for money. Time is money. So one question we get a lot is, how did you come up with the name Boring Lab? Well, our CTO, Danny, and I went to ISC West in 2018 and saw all these attractive, cool-looking applications like facial recognition and object detection. And as the day went on, we realized that everyone seemed to be solving for the same problem. But that wasn't our problem. We wanted to solve for the boring stuff. Things like bulk configuration, renaming, and creating device groups, cybersecurity and password management, compliance, and reporting. So we set out to build it, and in the end, I think we can all agree that saving time and money for our company is not actually boring. So that's how we came up with the name. Basically, we want to do all the boring stuff so that you don't have to. In general, here are some of the benefits of using Boring Toolbox. We are exclusively built for Milestone, so you can count on our integration always working. Our local and global dashboards provide a quick way to see system health at a glance. Compliance is made easy using our awesome reports. And of course, at the heart of what we do, bulk operations, which removes the boredom and saves your sanity. So up until this point, Boring Toolbox architecture was mostly based on how to make deployment and updates to existing Milestone systems as simple as possible. But now that we have so many great customers who see the value of Boring Toolbox for deployments and maintenance, they started asking us for features that revolved around monitoring and metrics. This led us to re-architect the back end of Boring Toolbox to be able to support those requests. And V5 is the foundation of our move forward. The feedback from customers using our current report module has been amazing. If you do not know our reports, they are in Excel, easy to use, pull valuable information from different parts of Milestone. Many of our customers tell us that just the time saving from the report module alone pays for the cost of the toolbox. Once they started using it, however, they saw a need to deliver different reports to different people in the organization. People that do not have any access to Milestone or Boring Toolbox. We listened, and in V5, we're releasing scheduled reports so that our customers can now send reports directly to the people who need them without any additional work on their behalf. Let me show you. Sorry. So this is Boring Toolbox client. And you'll see here on the left-hand side, we now have a new category called scheduling. And here we have our reports. This is our scheduled reports grid, where you can create a scheduled report to go to different people throughout your organization. And you can create as many reports as you would like. I'll go ahead and edit this report so you can see how that works. The first thing you do is you just give it a friendly name so that you can remember what this report is for. This will also be on email notifications that come through. You can set the recurrent schedule, so you can have this report come into your inbox daily or on a specific day of the week, let's say on Friday morning or evening in this case. Or we can do it monthly, so first day, last day, or a specific day of the month. We set a start time for this report to start being generated. This allows you to create reports both during the day as well as at night. And I'll show you why that's important. Here we can also select the time zone for the report to run. So this is great for those distributed global deployments where you have different teams in different parts of the world. We can run these reports at those times so that they arrive in the inbox when the staff comes to work. Here's our recipient email list. We can add one or many recipients here using semicolons. And on the right-hand side is where we show our filters. So we have, for those of you using our report module, this is similar to that. We can choose the reporting source based on recording servers. But more importantly, for scheduled reports, we can actually choose reports to run on a device group. So for example, if you're a school district and you have different maintenance teams maintaining different schools, you could select the device group for upper middle school, and the report will only contain the devices pertinent to that school. We can filter out the disabled devices. We can only select a specific device type, so for example, cameras. And then we can include or exclude any number of these pieces of information here, including point-in-time camera snapshots, device retention, recording server storage, camera storage, and all our streams. And so let me show you what that looks like in your inbox. So that report was going to Homer J, and this is Homer J's inbox. And you'll see that I get an email that it has our daily compliance report. And from here, I can get some details about that report, but then I just click Download Report, and it'll download the Excel file directly into my computer. The beautiful part about that is that we actually don't need internet for this to happen. So if you are in a closed system, that is okay. As long as you are on the network and can connect to the management server, we will download it directly from there. So for those of you who haven't seen our reports, they come out like this in Excel. They come out ready to be sorted and filtered straight away. All this information is point in time, so real-time information, always accurate. You see you have all your standard device information as well as the camera status. And then as we keep scrolling, here is our point-in-time snapshot. So this happened at night. And here is our retention. So it shows us our actual retention as well as our configured retention and retention periods so that you can make sure that you're compliant to your company standards. And as we move over, we have our settings as well. And then on our next tab, we can check the recording server physical storage to make sure that we're not running out of storage space. And then lastly, this checks our Milestone archive configuration to make sure that this is not filling up as well. The last thing I'll actually show you, which I forgot, and I apologize, is that we do keep a history of all the reports here that were run. We keep, I believe, 30 days. And so if you needed to pull a report from 2 weeks ago, you can come down here and pull that report. And this will be the same report that was run 2 weeks ago, so the same snapshots, the same retention information. So if you do need to compare today versus 2 weeks ago, you can now do that. Let me head back over to our slides. So live monitoring. A big change from V4 to V5 comes in the form of 24/7 monitoring. Our customers love the live monitoring tile on Boring Client dashboard, but wanted something that would always keep an eye on their system health. To answer that request, we created live monitoring as an always-on background service. It's boring, and there's honestly not much to show you, but it's critical for knowing when cameras stop providing video and when recording servers go down. So as I mentioned, there's really not much to show, but I will kind of show you what that looks like in your inbox. So going back to Homer J over here, you will see that we get our camera not providing video reports. And then as that camera comes back online, we'll also provide you a camera providing video report so that you can make sure that you're tracking. There are some additional notification settings that we've built into this that will allow you to receive batch notifications. So if you don't want to see when just one camera goes down, you can receive a batch email instead. So as the size and complexity of our customers grew, the features that we offered had to grow with them. That is why in V5 we're introducing a new multi-site architecture. So for those of you with large distributed installations with multiple management servers, you can now save all your sites as managed sites underneath a parent. Doing this will pull those managed sites into the global dashboard automatically and load them into the Boring Toolbox, removing the need to open multiple tabs each time you log in. This not only saves time, but also saves system resources, making Boring Toolbox even more efficient. So let me show you how this new hierarchy works. So going back to Boring Client, you see we have a new section called Configuration, and here we have Managed Sites. So we have the idea here of a hierarchy. So you have a parent site, and then you have managed sites underneath that. Whether you are on a multi-site architecture or a single-site architecture, you will always set up your parent site. When you set up your parent site, you're actually setting up your background services. And so let's go ahead and set up a managed site so you can see how that looks. So we'll set up a friendly name, and we'll go with a high school name to go with the motto. We'll put in our dedicated license count for this particular site. And note that this is a totally separate management server here. There is no connection to the parent. They're not on the same domain. They're not federated. They're not interconnected. They're just a totally separate management server. But because they're both running the Boring Server service, we're able to connect to it and manage it in a hierarchy. So we'll also select the user that has access to Milestone. We'll click Next. Boring Toolbox will then start testing the connection to make sure that we actually have access to the Boring API that's running on that system. Here we can enable email notifications for this managed site. If we just turn on the top one here, this will turn on email notifications, and we'll use the Boring Labs servers for email, so you don't have to do anything else. But if you don't have internet and you can only access your local SMTP server, you can turn on advanced SMTP settings and enter in the local SMTP server information. On the next screen here, we have our live monitoring setting, which is camera not providing video threshold. And so this is set, you can set this from 10 seconds all the way up to 1 hour. And when you set this, the Boring Toolbox will actually take a camera which stops providing video and put it into a queue for 90 seconds in this case, as you can see here. We'll only send a notification of camera not providing video only after that threshold has been exceeded. That way, if you have a distributed site, you're not getting a whole bunch of emails. We can filter out interconnected sites, interconnected cameras if we so wanted to. Great for a parent site with a bunch of interconnected devices. And then here are those notification settings I mentioned. So we'll go ahead and save that managed site. So what it's saving, what it's doing, it's actually sending the configuration down to the managed site. So we are configuring the managed site from the Boring Toolbox, even though we're not directly connected to it. And when we save this information, as I mentioned with the parent, we are turning on the background services for Westside High. And by doing that, we're enabling live monitoring 24/7, always on Westside High, using the settings that we set when we went through the wizard. Now, the great thing is when you log into the parent site and you go up to Global Dashboard, you can now see all your managed sites here without having to connect to them every single time you load Boring Toolbox. And we have this button here for Start Monitoring. And what this does is it doesn't start monitoring on the server. That's actually happening 24/7 in the background. What this is doing is actually just connecting to each one of these managed sites and pulling in that system health information. And we're starting to monitor it locally on the Boring global dashboard. The benefit of this is that if you're coming in here just to do some bulk configuration or renaming, we are not sucking in all this information and potentially bogging down your network, just making it lighter for certain instances. Now that we're connected to all these managed sites, we can also download a site report. So for those of you who are aggregating reports from different locations, now we have the ability to pull a report from all our managed sites with all our device information, as well as camera status. So we can quickly get a glimpse of how we're doing, and we can put that in a report. The same thing goes for our recording servers as well. We can see the status of each of our recording servers across all of our sites. Really handy report. Now, let's say you wanted to start configuring Westside High, maybe do some renaming or configuration changes. You no longer have to open up a tab manually. We can just click over here on the child. It'll pop that into an additional tab, and we can log right in to Westside High's management server and start using all the features of Boring Toolbox from a management perspective. And we can also pull in the local dashboard, which is even more detailed than the global dashboard. So the last thing I want to show before we get into questions is the IoT connector. So we saw that our customers were starting to connect different sensors to Milestone, and we wanted to give them a better way to manage those sensors in the event that, and the events that surrounded them. So we created what we're calling the IoT connector. This is made up of two parts: a simple wizard that will not only add the sensors to Milestone, but will configure the sensor hardware as well as create events in Milestone, and the event listener, which takes the alerts from the sensor and triggers events in Milestone with the camera metadata. This reduces the number of events and rules in Milestone exponentially, reducing complexity and human error. Our first integration is with Halo Smart Sensor. If you have not heard of Halo, this is a smart sensor that has several different detections on it, including vape, THC, aggression, and others. And so I'll kind of show you what that looks like here. So this is our hardware tab where we can manage hardware in Milestone. Here you'll see we have already one Halo added to the system. But what we'll do in this demo is add one additional Halo. So we'll click on IoT Connector. And the idea here is that we are going to add the Halo onto the network with a default configuration. Now I know the IP address of this Halo, so I'm just going to type that in just to save some time. But we can search the entire network, rather the subnet for that Halo. I'll click next. We can add it to a recording server. So if we have multiple Halos, we can choose a different recording server per each Halo. And then here is where we map cameras or devices to a Halo sensor. So for example, I'm going to be mapping 2 cameras to this Halo sensor. So whenever Boring Toolbox receives an alert from this Halo sensor, Boring Toolbox will trigger events in Milestone for these 2 devices. I'll hit next. We can add it to a device group. We can add it to one or many device groups in Milestone. Next, and we can save changes. So when we hit save changes, what it's actually doing is it's reaching out to the smart sensor, and we're configuring the smart sensor to be able to be added to Milestone. We're setting it up, making sure that the events and alerts are there and ready to work. And then we're also adding it to Milestone in the background. We're adding it to the groups. We're also creating a series of events in Milestone that we could then trigger using those mapped devices that I showed you. So let's turn on detailed view here. Now you can see that this particular halo has been added to Milestone, and it's also in those two groups that I added it to. Now let's see if we can trigger some events using Halo. So I have Halo's dashboard up here, and I have Smart Client here. And so I have a rule in Milestone XProtect that will send those mapped cameras to a matrix, and will also send email alerts when an aggression is detected. So I'll go ahead and test aggression, and you'll see that it automatically populates the two mapped cameras in this particular halo. And if I roll over to Homer J's inbox, I should start seeing emails roll in. For this particular halo, there should be two. And so there's the email notification for this one. If I wanted to see it for the new one, I'd have to reload this just to be sure I have the new configuration with the new halo. But we could log into the new halo just by copying the password here and logging into that halo. And then triggering an aggression. And you'll see that two different cameras pop up because those are dynamically mapped to this new halo that we added. And you'll also see that I'll receive two additional emails. So the beauty of this, and if you want, I'll show you so that you can see that there's no hocus pocus, no magic. There is only one halo rule for aggression. And you can see here in our user-defined events, these are all the boring events that we've created in Milestone. And there is only one aggression event. And so the beauty of this is that it doesn't matter if you have one halo or 1,000 halos. Once you set up the first one, you'll never have to touch this again. So there's no further configuration. And so we're calling this the IoT connector, even though that halo is our first integration, because we really want to see we want to get some additional integrations going because we believe that there's going to be, sensors are the future here. And will really allow us to get more creative with the way we can save people time. So that's where we're at. I'm finished with the presentation, got it just in time. Want to get some questions going.
Hey, Ronan, can you hear me all right? This is Fred.
Yes, Fred.
All right. Well, there are several questions that came in here. Some, I would say, a bit granular, maybe to a person's existing deployment or specific to their needs, but there are a few that are in here that I think would be worthwhile answering for the attendees on right now. The first one I got down here is, you mentioned the event listener. So the question is, what exactly is the event listener and how does it work?
Good question. So the event listener is really a TCP listener for the time being. We're thinking of expanding that. That runs in the background 24/7 and gets configured when we add these Halo devices. to Boring Toolbox, well, to Milestone through Boring Toolbox. And it's just listening for the events for the configured devices. And when we get those, sorry, with the alerts from the configured devices, and when we get those alerts, then it sends a trigger to Milestone for the user-defined events with those mapped cameras that we set up in the IoT connector.
Okay, there's a follow-up question that just came in. If from the IoT connector, right now, is it only working with Halo sensors?
Today, yes. We are actively looking for additional integrations. So if the person that wrote that wants to send us an email and let us know what they think would be a good next integration, we'd be open to that.
Excellent. All right, another question that came through here is, which XProtect platform does this work on? Do they work on all of them?
It works on C code, Milestone XProtect C code platform. So that's Essential Plus, Express Plus, Professional Plus, Expert, and Corporate. And we've tested all the way down to 2016 R2.
Excellent. Okay, another question came in here. Can the reports be configured to only supply specific information? This particular person has a maintenance department that does not need some of the details in the file.
So this is where you would set up any filters. We don't have the ability to tick on and off all the information that's in the report. However, we can uncheck whatever you don't need for that particular recipient, and hopefully that would be sufficient. If you need more granularity, let us know. Maybe that's something that we can add to our backlog.
Excellent. Another question here is, how does this information get stored?
This information is stored in a database. When you do your installation of Boring Toolbox V5, we will be installing a new database or creating a new database in your existing SQL server. We'll use the same Microsoft SQL server that your Milestone setup is currently using for the management server, and just create a new database in there.
Excellent. Okay, last question that's probably worthwhile for the group here before we wrap up is, how difficult is this to install?
It's not very difficult. We do have some pretty good updated instructions on the website when you download it. If you meet those caveats, which is really just permissions based for the most part, the installation is still roughly 5 minutes for the server side, and a couple minutes for the Boring Toolbox client. So we're still trying to make it easy. We are going to work on making the installation of the server part even easier and smoother. But for the most part, it should still run about 5 to 15 minutes, assuming that you have all permissions necessary.